Shalom and welcome to the Middle East Report. In this program today we have two special guests joining us, a father and son. One of them is fighting the spiritual battle for Israel. The other one is serving with the Israeli Defense Force and fought against Hamas in Gaza. And this is their inspirational story. Aaron and Micah, warm welcome to the Middle East Report. So thank you so much for being here. And can I say, Aaron, it was an absolute pleasure to be invited to speak at the annual CMJ conference up in Staffordshire. And it was a brilliant conference, met some fantastic people. And so in Hebrew, kol hakavod, well done. It was an excellent weekend, so thank you. And I'll start off with you, Aaron. I mean, share with us, because you are currently the UK director for CMJUK, which is the Christian ministry to the Jewish people. You've also served as a deacon in Christ Church in Jerusalem for 26 years. And you also come from and born in Australia. So do you want to share something about your Australian background and how you came to faith in Jesus Christ?
Okay, well, I grew up in a Christian family like many of us. And like many of us, it's a great basis to explore faith and be protected, but you don't always initially share the faith of your parents, although that can come. For myself, I came to faith at a creation versus evolution debate. I didn't have that experience or the blinding light on the road to Damascus. Instead, for me, it was some scientists like Michael stand up and say, I've got lots of PhDs, and the way that I look at the world, it screams intelligent design. There's someone very powerful, someone very, very loving who's made this universe. And so that was my journey. And after coming to faith, I went around the world, wanted to see this great universe that it was. I went to Canada, went right across Canada, traveled through America into Mexico, came over to England, and then ended up driving all the way to Jerusalem.
Incredible. And share with us how and when the Lord gave you a heart and a love for Israel and the Jewish people.
It was actually in Canada when on a Sunday I wanted to go to church. So I went to literally the nearest church, which was a Lutheran church. And when I walked into this church, there on the altar was a Canadian flag, which you might expect, and an Israeli flag. And I remember sitting there thinking, what is that doing there? And when I spoke to the pastor, a Norwegian Lutheran pastor, he looked at me in the face and said, Aaron, God still has a plan for the Jewish people. You probably should reread your Bible. And I was so struck by his authenticity, but also his challenge. I did. And that began to see that God has a passion for his people. The gifts and calling of God were irrevocable, and therefore I needed to learn something about it. So my quest started in a small church in Canada.
Amazing, thank you. And Micah, it's an absolute pleasure for you to be here today. And on behalf of myself and on behalf of our viewers, can we salute you for the courageous work that you are doing, being a believer in Yeshua, fighting with the IDF, and you've recently just served in Gaza and in Lebanon as well. But we'll unpack a bit more of that later. But share with us about your life, because clearly you've got your father with you today. But you were born in Bethlehem, but you have an Israeli passport. So share with us your story.
Yeah, so my story starts in the middle of the Second Intifada. So my parents were volunteers at Christ Church, which is the CMJ Church in Jerusalem. And there was a 3-day ceasefire in the Second Intifada. During that ceasefire, my parents went to a fairly cheap hospital in Bethlehem because it was available, had me, and then they came out. And basically the day after they came out, the ceasefire ended. So I was very briefly in Bethlehem. And interestingly enough, I do not actually have an Israeli passport. That is in process. I am an Israeli citizen, having served in the Israeli army. But I have an Australian passport and Australian citizenship by virtue of being born to two Australians.
Excellent. And share with us your faith story growing up, because clearly you're influenced so much with what your parents are doing at Christ Church in Jerusalem, and it's a fabulous church there right in the heart of the old city in Jerusalem. Share with us the impact it was on your Christian faith growing up, living in Israel, and essentially also learning to be an Israeli as well.
Of course. Well, I, along with my two younger sisters, were homeschooled at home by mum, occasionally by him. And so most of our studies also included quite a lot of Bible. So daily scripture readings, memorization of verses, things like that, going to church every Sunday. So God was never a foreign concept. God was always in the home and around the home, with us, around us. So like my dad said, there is this, not everyone will choose to follow the religion of their parents. So for me, I made the decision to be baptized a week before I got drafted. I was very conscious of timing, and I was about to go into this very different environment. It wasn't going to be like home. It was going to be surrounded by people who aren't believers, and I wanted something strong to ground me. And so I got baptized in the garden at the back of Christchurch.
Amazing. Well, wonderful. And Aaron, we share something in common. Not only do we have a love and a passion for Israel and the Jewish people in the scriptures as well, but you also attended the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, the Rosenberg International School. I did a 3-month program there with the Hebrew U in the summer of 1996 as part of my course at Manchester, which I studied, got BA honours in modern Middle Eastern history and modern Hebrew. My Hebrew is a bit rusty, so don't test me. But show us what it was like to study in Jerusalem and then finally work for CMJ and being in Jerusalem for 26 years with Christchurch.
Well, the Intifada had started, and all the tourists had left, and all the visitors that would normally come to Christchurch, the Israelis we would interact with, were gone. And I took that opportunity to go and study. My first degree is in psychology and sociology, so not religion at all. I didn't think I was actually going to do very well, but what I ended up finding out is I was so drawn to the material, I just fell in love with it. So I studied early Jewish and Christian interpretation of Bible. I studied how Jews and Christians interpreted the Bible between the years 300 and 300 when there wasn't a Bible. So people are still trying to figure out what books are in, what books are out. Not every community has the same material. How are they interpreting it? How are they reading it? And for me, that really deepened it. Well, first of all, it made the scriptures come alive. And for me, it really deepened my faith in the Messiah.
Amazing. And what was it like, working for CMJ in Jerusalem and being, as they say in Hebrew, a Jerusalemite, living in Jerusalem, working in Jerusalem, God's eternal city, which can be an incredible place, but it can also be a very dangerous place as well.
It can definitely be both. It's a tension, and it's an excitement. It's all of those things at once. In fact, when you look at the Bible from a Hebrew perspective, you look at faith from a Hebrew perspective, you wrestle with tension. Things can be true in both A and B. So Jerusalem can be a very safe place, and it can be a very dangerous place. You can go down one street, and people can be sitting in coffee shops. Jews, Arabs, everybody, and actually having a good social time. The very next street could be a riot. And you go, how can that possibly be? It just can. The tensions are quite amazing. Living and working in Jerusalem, if I forget thee, O Jerusalem, may my right hand lose its cunning. There is something magical about those stones. I didn't get that until after the first 6 months of being in Israel. I went on the Mount of Olives to watch the sunrise over the city. And you're sitting down there and it's dark, everything's quiet, and as the sun begins to peek over, it hits those yellow stones, the sandstone, it turns gold, the city becomes gold, begins to wake up. And I was sitting on the mountain thinking, it's a dirty city, it's full of tension. There are lots of other nicer cities with skylines around the world. You can think of them, Vancouver, London, New York. But then suddenly you get it and you go, God said, my eyes and my heart are always here. There's something about this place. And when it gets you and it resonates with you in your spirit, you will never forget this place.
Amen. Definitely. It's a place that you always, when you see it and you spend time there, you always leave your heart there. And also it's like a magnet. Jerusalem just draws you back time and time again. And Aaron, just share with us what CMJ is, which is the church's ministry to the Jewish people, because this ministry is over 200 years old. And it's got to be the oldest Christian Zionist ministry in the world, is it not?
It definitely is that. It's one of the oldest Church of England mission societies as well. Started in 1809, and its foundation actually begins with the invention of the printing press. So when the printing press produces its first book, which is of course the Bible, people start to read the Bible. And prior to that, we had to listen to the priests and the bishops give their interpretation. But when you had your own copy, people could flip over and read it and they go, wow, oh my gosh, Jesus isn't coming back to Paris or to London, as nice as those cities might be. He's coming back to Jerusalem. And so this created a movement within evangelical Christianity of philo-Semitism, a real love of Zion, a real love of the Jewish people, and with fresh eyes being able to see that God's calling for his people was still real and valid, and he was going to do something. So this society began in London, and then it spread all over the world. Wherever you found Jewish people, this community was building hospitals, it was building schools, it was building mission stations, it was translating the Bible into all kinds of languages, and it was building communities of both Jewish people, Arab people, all kinds of people, demonstrating the one new man to the world, as well as challenging the church to have a hard look at their Bible again and to put their Bible in context and to understand that the scriptures do not come to us from a vacuum. They come to us from first century Jewish culture.
Amen to that. So let's have a look at the overview of the ministry that is CMJ UK.
We are CMJ, the church's ministry among Jewish people. We have a history to celebrate and a future to declare about reaching out to Jewish people and revealing to them something that is life-changing. We want to explain to them how Jesus, or Yeshua as they would know him, is their Messiah, and how this actually sits with being a Jew. This is not a new mission, and we are not new missionaries. We have a history to celebrate. Our organization was, in fact, founded in 1809 by a Jewish believer in Jesus called Joseph Frey. The vision he had to begin this work is based on scriptures such as Romans 1 verse 16. For I am not ashamed of the gospel, because it is the power of God that brings salvation to everyone who believes, first to the Jew, then to the Gentile. Since then, such names as William Wilberforce and Lord Shaftesbury have supported this great work of God. Our mission has spread not only in the UK, but also internationally, thanks to our workers such as Richard Wormbrand. Today, CMJ's ministry is vibrant and alive across every continent, especially in Israel. The good news is so important and dear to us, we simply need to share it. We have a future to declare. This we do with a focus on evangelism, education, and encouragement. Evangelism means not keeping the gospel message to ourselves. We need to share it sensitively among Jewish people, which means we have to be present and active wherever the subject matter provokes interest and discussion. Education is about Christianity's biblical roots. These need explaining and sharing with many in our churches today. It's only by educating that we will encourage a deeper understanding that people will want to share. Last but not least, encouragement. When people change their understanding of Jesus the Messiah and the biblical roots of the faith, we need to feed their interest and help them mature in their understanding. We help Messianic believers to connect with other like-minded Jews and with Christians in the various churches today. We are always looking for new ways to do evangelism, education and encouragement by forums, group events and conferences to celebrate this great work. Looking back at our past, there is much to celebrate for what God has done and blessed. As we say, ours is a history to celebrate and a future to declare. Today, we are equipping churches, opposing anti-Semitism, building bridges that promote reconciliation, raising awareness, training, entertaining, laughing, and even dancing for our faith. A history to celebrate and a future to declare. Why not join in our celebration and come with us on our journey and help us declare this to future generations of Jews and Christians. You can journey with us as a friend on Facebook, enjoy our website, bless our ministry financially, or simply pray for our future, declaring God's love for His people.
So that's an overview of the ministry that is CMJ UK, and can I recommend their conferences because they are superb. A good time to be around like-minded people, to be spiritually fed with the importance of Israel and the Jewish people, and wonderful speakers and a wonderful community. There you go. I've done my promo and the plug for CMJ UK. Micah, show what it's like to be part of this ministry as well, literally following in your father's footsteps.
Right, so growing up in Israel, in CMJ, I was exposed to quite a lot of variety, let's say. The world comes to Jerusalem, so there's often, in our church, we have a very small kind of core group of people who live in Jerusalem, work in Jerusalem. So that's our family and our friends and so on and so forth. But then the vast majority of the congregation would be pilgrims. So occasionally, you get a group of Dutch people or, Ugandans, Nigerians, people coming into Jerusalem on pilgrimage or doing tours. They're studying. Often there's a bunch of students from Hebrew U. So just being, around a lot of different cultures, a lot of different people, it's a good way to grow up. Just personal experience.
I can imagine. And Aaron, share with us what your experience was like being a deacon in Christchurch, because it's a beautiful church. A beautiful courtyard is very special, and then you go into the actual church itself, an extremely hot day on a Sunday morning, and it's so refreshing because the walls are so thick, it's so cool in there. Just share with us what it was like, ministering in Christchurch, and share with us some interesting stories, because I was told one interesting story of how you had an encounter with a rabbi in the apartments that you were living in, and people didn't actually pay their rent, so you deliberately dressed up in your religious priest attire, knocking on people's door, making sure that all the residents paid their money to the rabbi what they owed him, which then birthed a beautiful friendship with the local rabbi. That's just one story I know.
So after studying at Hebrew University and learning the deep riches of the Christian faith, which is the roots of our faith are Jewish, then I felt called to the ordained ministry. So I was actually ordained by the Bishop of Bolivia, and he commissioned me to be a deacon at Christchurch, and I served there as a deacon from 2008 to 2024. It was a great time. You're serving a mixed community of Jews, Arabs and Gentiles who believe in Yeshua. You're ministering to people who don't believe in Yeshua. You're ministering to Muslims as well as to secular Jews. You're being challenged by so many different walks of Christianity, the Orthodox, Catholic, various Protestant groups, and so it's a very vibrant. You have to be on your game, and every time you get challenged, it's also cementing your own personal experience and your own faith journey. Living with Jewish people and being a Christian was actually, how do I say, it was actually easy to be a witness. You see, when you leave your front door and they know that man's not Jewish, that man's not an Arab, therefore by default he must be Christian. So everything you do is a witness. The way you act, the way you talk, the way you love, the way you get angry, you name it. That emotional experience is a witness to somebody. Here, living in London or England, when you leave your front door, you look like everybody else. How do people know I'm a follower of Yeshua here? So here's actually harder to be a witness. There, amongst all the tension people might or say about Israel, about Jerusalem, it actually was very easy to be a witness for Jesus.
Amazing. I didn't know that. Thank you. And Micah, share with us a few years ago why you decided to join the IDF, the Israeli Defence Force. Being of Australian citizenship, you didn't have to join the IDF. So why did you decide to join the IDF and stand up and fight for Israel?
Well, you're absolutely right. I didn't have to join, but when I turned 18, I was no longer a child. I was legal adult. So I was no longer under my father's visa. So I needed my own reason to stay in the state of Israel. And unlike countries like the United States, where if you're born there, you receive citizenship automatically, it's not the case in Israel, especially if you're not Jewish. Then I was given the option, do I leave and come back and do like studies or volunteer work, something like that? Or do I apply for residency with the requirement that I join the army? So that was what I wanted to do. I didn't want to leave my family and then have to come back and be all this tug of war, going back and forth. I decided that's what I want to do. I want to stay, serve the country I was born in, the country I love. So yeah, went to the army.
So was it the army that you wanted to go into? Because I know within the IDF they have various exams and various tests, and depending on how well you do in those tests, they will deploy you to a certain regiment or a certain job in the army, or to the Navy, or to the Air Force. Share with us where the IDF decided to place you, or did you apply for that position yourself?
Well, the IDF put me in an infantry brigade in the army. So because I was homeschooled, I didn't have all the years of education lined up in the system, so they couldn't get, how smart I was. Not saying that I'm terribly genius, but just saying that they couldn't take that as a reference point. They had to do a series of tests, which included how strong my Hebrew was. My Hebrew wasn't terribly great, so I had to go off and do a 3-month course at the beginning of my service. After completing that course, I retook some of the tests, which included an interview, and the guy across the table from me asked me, "Where do you want to go?" And I'd been talking with some of my mates from church who'd been in the army, and most of them recommended going combat, because their argument was, you can go into high tech and do computer science, technician work, engineering, any of those things that the army can, yes, teach you and get a job in, but you can do all that in the civilian world. Going to the army, learning to be a soldier, learning to be a warrior, learning how to defend yourself and your family and your friends, that's something that only the army can teach you. You can only really learn it there. So that's what really drove me into the infantry.
What regiment did you join within the IDF?
I requested the Nachal Brigade, or Chativat Nachal in Hebrew. So historically they were made up of kibbutznikim, guys who live out in the desert, farmers, these sorts of people, all joined together. The rednecks of Israel, if you like. Yeah, so that's. I heard good things about their commanders, that they had a good relationship with their soldiers. So that was where I requested, and they gave it to me.
Excellent. My final question, what was it like being a believer? Because you told earlier in the programme how you wanted to get baptised before you joined the IDF. So share with us what it was like to be a believer in Yeshua while serving in the IDF, because the IDF is like a melting pot, isn't it? From all walks of Israeli life, including Israeli Arabs, those from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, all over Israel, from the left to the right, to the religious to the secular. It's just one big melting pot, and this is what makes Israel work, is the IDF and the social cohesion being in the army creates. What is it like to be a believer in the IDF?
Well, the IDF, being the Jewish army in defense of the Jewish state, is predominantly Jewish, so they have a lot of religious Jews there. All religious soldiers, regardless of the religion they follow, whether they be Jewish, Muslim, Christian, Catholic, Christian Orthodox, Christian Protestant, they don't really care. You can request time to pray and read your text of choice once, twice, 3 times, however many times you need, because in Judaism they have the morning, noon, and evening prayer cycle. So they just sort of apply that to everybody and say, hey, how many times do you need to pray? You tell us, we give that to you. So then when you're training, they will tell you, okay, after lunch, everybody, you get 30 minutes off before we start doing the next thing. And all the religious soldiers show up in an hour.
I can believe it.
Yeah. But then in terms of how people then related to me as a Christian, there was no vehemence, there was no, who are you, what are you doing here? It was, who are you? Why are you here? I mean, you're not Jewish, you're not Jewish religious. Why are you even with us? Why are you doing this? So it was a nice opportunity to explain, okay, this is who I am, this is what I believe, and this is why I'm here.
Amazing, thank you. And Aaron, share with us where you were on that evil day on October the 7th, which was the biggest mass terrorist attack in Israel's history, where that resulted in the murder of over 1,200 Israelis, foreign nationals. Between 5,000 and 6,000 people were injured on that day, many of them critical, and of course 250 hostages taken back to that hellhole that is Gaza. Share with us what October the 7th was like for you, and when did you first realise what was happening?
So we'd had a fantastic Shabbat the night previous. Micah was doing his last kav, his unit. He had done his had done his 3 years. He was last 3 months to go. He was stationed in Gush Etzion, so nearby Jerusalem, Tekoa, Bethlehem, those kinds of areas, Hebron. He was home for the Sabbath. We had a great family time. But very early in the morning, about 5:30, 6 o'clock, our friends in Arad and Beersheba were starting to call and send messages saying, turn the TV on, something's going on. No one quite knew. So when we turned the TV on, we were bombarded with horrible images. There was a lot of confusion, which meant that there was some uncertainty and some fear. I went downstairs and woke Micah up and said, call your commander, something's going on. Micah called his commander, who was at that time fighting in Yad Mordecai.
And literally 15 minutes from the border.
Literally 15 minutes from the border. So basically he had to get dressed. We got the family together because we knew what was going to happen. We were going to have to do what no parent wants to ever do, which is send your children to war. And so he had to get kitted up, and you have no clue what's going to happen after that. All you can say is, Micah, you need to go be brave. We need you to go be brave. And so we give them a blessing, and then I walked him. It was the Sabbath, so there's no public transport. So we walked up to a taxi rank, and as we were going up the street, then the Orthodox people were coming out of the houses because they can't turn their TVs on. They knew something was up, but they didn't know what it was, and they were asking questions like, what's going on, what's going on? And we were just saying, it's war, we're at war. And so you had these Orthodox citizens praying for a Christian soldier. Wow. And when you get to the taxi, it was an Arab Muslim who drove him to battle. Talk about irony of the Middle East, eh?
Absolutely. Yeah. It could only happen in Israel. Micah, share with us your initial thoughts when you knew what was unfolding in southern Gaza, that you knew that you were then going to be deployed into most probably Gaza, which you were. Share with us your thoughts on that call up, knowing that Israel's at war and that you could be involved in a combat operation deep inside the Gaza Strip against Hamas.
Well, waking up on October the 7th, I checked my WhatsApp. No one had sent any messages. My commanders, everybody was silent. Going upstairs and seeing the news, just image upon image, videos of Hamas terrorists crossing the border in their white Toyotas, gunning down people, you know, it genuinely ticked me off. Like, I was seething inside. And it was a case of how dare they and how could this have actually happened? October the 6th was an entirely different world. Absolutely. We fully believed that Hamas did not have the ability to do this. We thought that they were just, you know, shouting loudly, waving sticks and shooting the occasional rocket at us that did virtually nothing. You know, it was this, we were lulled into a false sense of security. You know, our last operation was 2014, for crying out loud, and that was limited. I think it was maybe a month. And so it was a complete shock to the system. And once we actually arrived back on base and were starting to get all of our kit together, I remember sitting on, we had like this covered patio area in front of my barracks, and I was sitting with some of my mates who were all smoking like mad. And we were all just kind of looking at each other going, what happened? You know, how did we get to this? And later on, then we got a conversation or a briefing, I suppose, with our battalion commander. And his words were, "We failed. We, the IDF, the defenders of Israel, failed. And now it's our job to go make it right." And so going into that as, okay, we messed up, but now we're going to go show them who's boss. But initially, we didn't believe we were going into Gaza. We believed, as the Nachal Brigade, our specialization, like what we trained for, is actually Lebanon. So on October the 8th, after we'd all got our kit together, bags packed, grenades, magazines, absolutely everything, we were transported over to a helipad, got on, I think they were Chinook helicopters, and our entire brigade was flown up to the northern border with Lebanon in preparation for a retaliation against what was assumed to be Hezbollah's attack following the Hamas attack from the south. But then ultimately that didn't actually happen. So after approximately a week, we were reassigned and deployed to the Gaza Strip.
So, a very important question, particularly for our viewers as well, and those who haven't been in combat and you're a believer. How do you prepare yourself spiritually for war?
Well, actually, one of the best ways was reading some of the Psalms and praying a heck of a lot. The Psalm in particular I'm referring to is Psalm 144, where it says, it's a Psalm of David, "The Lord prepares my hands for war, my fingers for battle. He is my strong fortress and my sure defense," something along those lines. Just praying that, knowing, look, God's going with us, his angels are going with us into combat. The Archangel Michael is the saint protector of Israel.
He's doing a great job, by the way.
Yeah, I've got a patch actually on my jacket, and it says "Saint Michael protect us." Yeah.
In Hebrew?
No, in English. Yeah.
Oh, superb.
That's also a conversation starter.
So I can imagine. And Aaron, you must be very proud of Micah here serving with the IDF, but share with us your role as a parent to pray for him and the rest of the soldiers, knowing that they are up against a formidable terror organisations such as Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza, knowing that Hamas do not comply to the Geneva Convention, use asymmetrical warfare using women and children and the elderly as human shields, and they will stop at nothing to kill as many people as they can, even their own people.
We knew it was going to be a tough fight for them because of an urban combat, and we knew that it was going. We were asking our sons and daughters to go and do something horrible. So basically you learn what it really means to surrender something to the Lord. Many of us as Christians, we may say, "Oh, I surrender this to Jesus." Well, wait till you have no control over what happens to your children anymore, because now they have to go and face an enemy, and you've asked them to be brave for you. You pray a lot. You pray a lot. You read scriptures with an extra little bit of zeal and passion. You cling to your remaining children like you've never done before. I checked the front door 5 or 6 times every day just to see if there were 2 soldiers waiting for me to talk to me, because they take their phones away from them when they go into battle. So you don't hear from them. So when Michael walked out the door, I didn't hear from him for 50 days. So he was busy. They have to get them in the zone. We know that as parents. So the parents get together in a chat group. We meet each other. We support each other. Unfortunately, some of the sons did fall in battle, so we had to go and go to their funerals, which is absolutely horrible. But you really surrender something. You give something to the Lord, and you ask them you ask the Lord to protect them, please. But at the same time, at exactly the same time, you're wanting your kids to do their job. They've got to go get the hostages. They have to go find those tunnels. They have to go and literally remove Hamas from power and give the Palestinians freedom. Real freedom is to remove that dark threat, that dark power that sits over them. What struck me with his unit was actually one of his commanders, a guy called Shai Shamriz, of blessed memory. When he was giving a pep talk to the soldiers before they went into battle, as parents, we were able to witness and see that. he said, in every generation there arises someone who has to say, Hineni, here I am. That task has fallen on you. But he then turned around and said, you are the shield against Amalek. You're not fighting flesh and blood. Yes, you're going to have to go fight Hamas. But that's not the real enemy. The real enemy is an ancient enemy. The real enemy is something dark, something spiritual. In English, we call him, the Antichrist. But in Hebrew, you call him Amalek. He's the nation that came to capture Israel when they came out of Egypt, to enslave a people who were supposed to be free in the Lord. He is everything against the plans of God. And we were sending our sons and daughters up against him. So you pray like crazy.
Yeah, and definitely entering into kind of spiritual warfare, and you obviously very much involved in the physical warfare and the fighting, Micah. But share with us what it was like being in Gaza, and share with us from your experience what you have to face and what your fellow brothers in arms had to face as well in fighting Hamas in Gaza. Because our media is so distorted that we don't get this perspective. So to hear and to watch you today share your experience is so vital to counter a lot of this media propaganda that we're seeing against Israel on our mainstream media.
Right. Well, it started in the middle of the night. We were informed to go in on foot, following tanks, military bulldozers, D9s. We had drones whirring over our heads 24/7, and effectively going in the middle of the night through a breach in the fence that we had made, not one that they did. It was a slow crawl, took us all night to reach the outskirts of Gaza City. That whole time we were straining for any sign of enemy movement. We thought they were going to ambush us. We thought they were going to, come out at us when we were at our lowest point, weary as anything. But in fact, what we noticed was, as we crept further and further forward to the first line of houses, to the second line of houses, past the first block into the second block, we weren't seeing anybody. Hamas was actively running away from us. There were sounds of gunfire. There was a lot of shooting. Oftentimes we would find ourselves, in order to maintain tactical strength, I suppose, you have to fire actively at what you assume to be a threat, where you believe the enemy is, and then you approach it. So there's a lot of noise, a lot of tanks going off, drones dropping bombs, but we didn't actually find any Hamas for quite a long time. It took us about a week and a half before we actually started receiving proper altercations with them. Going into houses, clearing houses. Occasionally you break open a door and you find civilians, and then it becomes a case of, well, everything has to stop, the advance stops, and you have to deal with this, because now you have an active problem. Separating women and children from the men, checking the men, making sure they don't have any weapons, no bombs, no suicide vests, absolutely nothing like that. Checking the house, going all the way up, because in Gaza they're very tightly packed and very tall, kind of 7 to 8 story, especially in the center buildings. So yeah, then once you've found, like for us especially, once we had checked everybody and made sure there were no threats, which thank goodness for me, there were none. We found a few weapons occasionally in these houses, but none of that the civilians had. Once they were checked and vetted, we would just put them on the street and say, go to Rafah. Because that's what we'd been told was the safe zone. You are in the middle of an active battlefield, you need to get out of here. And sometimes they would actually have what we would call in Hebrew the chutzpah, the impudence to tell us, no, you need to get us to Rafah. Meanwhile, we're telling them, I'm sorry, what? You go. We're having a job here. We've got a job to do. But yeah, then it was slow going very often.
Just stop there a minute, because I think what you just said there is fascinating. So you are telling me that when you're in Gaza, you had the residents of Gaza in these homes, it was their homes, and they wanted an IDF escort to Rafah.
A few of them did.
Yeah, which considering that you're supposed to be the enemy, in no other circumstances would you trust an enemy force to be an escort. That is
Interestingly enough,
remarkable.
yes. A lot of the times we would have Hamas citizens, Gazan citizens, coming up to us, and saying, "I know where Hamas are hiding weapons." Meanwhile, we're staring at them going, "I don't think this is, we need to check on this." So we get our our Arabic translators. Sometimes they're, Druze, which we're seeing a lot in the media now. Druze people speak Arabic, or Arab Israelis serving, or just Israelis who know Arabic well. And then they talk to the Gazans. Gazans lead us to warehouses, which we then proceed to blow up. I remember once we actually rigged Hamas's explosives to blow it up instead of wasting our own, which was
That's cool.
fairly good.
That's irony. That's good irony. Excellent. And Aaron, all the time that your son Micah here was fighting in Gaza, share with us the responsibility of the church then to actually pray for Micah and the other believers and the rest of the IDF there fighting what was only described as such an intense conflict in Gaza, but also what was the impact of October the 7th on Christchurch, because the whole country and is still suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, and so many Israelis have been uprooted from, I think, 120,000 or 140,000 from the south and from the north, who end up living in hotels with no tourists at all.
Yeah, some people don't understand that there's refugees in both countries, not just in Gaza. There's refugees inside Israel of Israelis who can no longer live in their homes as well. So in the Bible, the world is both spiritual and physical, and God operates in both. So he is the resurrection, but he tells us to go and preach the resurrection. So for the church, we had to understand that we're engaged in a physical struggle, which included confusion, people questioning, the existence of the Lord, etc., etc. But we were also engaged in a spiritual struggle. So we, as Christchurch, we're praying for the peace of Jerusalem. What does that actually mean? And in this case, the peace of Jerusalem isn't just the absence of war; it's the absence of the spiritual enemy. We're looking for the kingdom of heaven to rule and reign, for God to rule and reign. So we were engaging with the Jewish Arab and world, the Arab world, the Islamic world, and the Christian world around the world, trying to also share the truth. Because one of the first casualties of war is, of course, truth.
Absolutely.
And some of the lies that people would come out. They would say, your son's engaging in genocide. So that's not true. As a parent, we're allowed to look at the body cams of our sons and daughters, so we know what they do, and they did not commit genocide. They're trying to save people and rescue hostages, and they're often in an impossible situation. But for us outside, it was also we had to ask these guys to be brave, but we also had to be brave too. And,
absolutely. And Micah, share with us, there's a difference between, say, previous incursions into Gaza, previous conflicts with Gaza, or even Hezbollah going back to the Second Lebanon War. But this time it was different after October the 7th, wasn't it? Because you guys were fighting like lions, because Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza, Hezbollah in the north in southern Lebanon, 90,000 troops belonging to the Iranian Revolutionary Guards in Syria, the Houthis, plus the Iranian regime had built up a wall of fire against Israel. And so you guys were literally fighting for your very existence. Share with us the difference when you're actually fighting for your existence and what that brings out in you as a fighter and the rest of the officers and soldiers that you served so bravely alongside.
Well, I would say the first thing is knowing that the Gaza Strip is only, like we were saying at the very beginning, my platoon leader lives 15 minutes from the Gaza Strip. So there are Israeli citizens, whether they be ex-army, current army, citizens in general, civilians, living so close to Gaza. the nearest capital, the nearest major city is about half an hour's drive away. Tel Aviv is an hour and a half. Jerusalem is 3. You know, just to put that into perspective, you are literally fighting for your existence on your doorstep. So for us, it was we can't lose this. We have to fight with everything we've got, and we've got to fight smart. So utilizing everything we have. You know, when you go into a house, you don't just walk in guns blazing like Rambo. You have to throw in grenades. You have to, you know, send in attack dogs. You have to put in drones. You know, if it's too dangerous, go back and drop a drone bomb on it. You know, it's slow progress. Often it would take us days to get anywhere, although in some instances we actually found ourselves speeding up because we were encountering less and less resistance as the enemy, terrified by us. I mean, they have absolutely nothing in comparison. No tanks, you know, they don't have the same equipment as us. You know, they can't. So when they hear all of this power coming in front of them, they turn tail and run away. You know, I remember once we walked into a building and we found in the kitchen, on the countertop, a glass of water with fingerprints still on it and an AK-47 thrown on the floor. Dude was nowhere to be seen. So, you know, I'm just waiting for the stories of Muslims coming to Christ saying, I saw angels,
Wow.
you know, coming with this. I mean, it's happened before. I wouldn't be surprised.
It's happened quite a few times in Israel before as well. Michael, on that thing, you also served in Southern Lebanon as well against Hezbollah. Share with us what that battlefield was like, because Hezbollah, we're talking about the jewel in the crown of the Iranian regime here. We're talking about the most sophisticated, most powerful terrorist organization in the world. And we know that Israel had a bit of a bloody nose the last time they went to war against Hezbollah in 2006. Clearly the Israelis hit Hezbollah a lot harder than they hit Israel, but even so, that wasn't a great war for Israel. Share with us what your experience was like fighting up in Southern Lebanon, what your unit was trained for.
Well, my unit, this is after I'd been released from active service. I was no longer a regular soldier, I was a reservist. And reserves are purely, when you finish your active service, you're then transported to a reserve brigade, which is made up of guys who, you know, whether they have finished their service a year after you or 10 years, whatever, they're all kind of the same stock. So we just continued training for that northern border. So for example, last year when I was called up to go and fight in Lebanon, then that's our unit was called because that's our area of expertise, so to speak. And our operation was to attack a village near Metula, more or less, a bit south of Metula. And we were told, going in, we're going to fight Hezbollah and we're going to get rid of anything that they have in this village that can be used to harm Israeli civilians. So we found an 18-wheel truck with a rocket launcher on the back, just hanging out in a garage. We found warehouses, bunkers, basements, just chock-a-block full of guns and ammo. You know, enough stuff for probably 2 battalions worth, and we torched it.
Wow.
And as our final farewell, we found that the school in the center of this village was being used as a headquarters for the Hezbollah officers in the village. So we called in the Air Force and they sent us a bomber to go and get rid of it.
That must be nice, knowing that you're blowing up the weapons used by, that were going to be used by Hezbollah against Israelis, knowing that you're saving so many Israeli lives.
And knowing that these weapons are not used with the intention of fighting face to face with actual soldiers. Their intention was to, just like October 7th, within hours, or even within an hour, to be armed up and across the border into Israeli settlements that are not even an hour's drive away. You know, not even an hour's walk away in some cases. Interestingly enough, very similar to Hamas, Hezbollah, not all of them are there for the cause, if you know what I mean. Yeah. Some of them are mercenaries. So they are, a fair few of them did just run. They took one look at the IDF and said, nah, I'm not dealing with this. Let's go home.
They were sensible ones. So much for dying as a shaheed and dying as a martyr for the cause of Allah.
Indeed.
Anyway, but that's a different question. And Aaron, you were relocated to head up CMJUK. Share with us your experience of coming here in 2024 and the way that the churches that you felt respond to Israel. And of course, what we've seen since October the 7th is a pandemic in Jew hatred in this country and around the world. But share with us your thoughts pretty much on the state of the church in this country as you see it coming from Jerusalem.
Living in Israel, you look at the world outside and you know that there's anti-Semitism. You know that there's a sort of a strong anti-Israel bias in the United Nations and in world governments, mostly secular ones, of course. So that was not going to be a surprise. But coming to the United Kingdom and seeing anti-Semitism inside the church, that was a bit of a surprise. I mean, I knew it's there, but not on the scale that it is, which was really surprising. I've been to a few conferences representing CMJ, and we have our little stands on book tables and opportunities to speak on various platforms. And our brothers and sisters will come up and just say point blank that we're wrong. God has nothing to do with Israel. The Israel of today has nothing to do with the Israel of the Bible, not even genetically related. And you think, where are you getting this rubbish from? That's just not true. What do you do with verses in Jeremiah where it says that if this nation ever ceases to be a nation in front of me, then the sun and the moon will stop? I mean, an everlasting covenant happens to have the words everlasting in it, which is really quite amazing. So I was stunned, I think, initially. Now I'm becoming a little more attuned to it and becoming a little bit more passionate in my response. So when I was first hearing it, was a case of, I can't believe I'm hearing what I can't literally believe my ears. But now it's a case of, no, we're not leaving this down. This has to be challenged, and we're going to challenge it. And so that's what we're doing a lot with. We wrote to every Jewish community in this country a personal letter saying that we as Christians owe the Jewish people a spiritual debt.
Absolutely.
It's because Jesus is Jewish that we love them. It's because Jesus is Jewish we have a passion for God and for Israel, and we'll stand with them wherever they need us to stand. And they wrote back, and so we've got a great engagement and dialogue again, which is absolutely fantastic.
Amazing. And Aaron, I only got a few minutes left, but share with us the importance of Christians and churches going back to the Jewish roots of their faith, understanding God's plans and purposes for Israel and the Jewish people at this critical moment in world history, and how the church can't afford to be silent as it was in the 1930s with this pandemic of Jew hatred. And we know where Jew hatred leads. It leads to total destruction, first of the Jewish people, then for our rest of our society, civilization and nations, as we see that evil emerges out of it, and we see that totalitarian regimes like Hitler emerge from Jew hatred that destroys our culture, destroys everything.
So you need a firm foundation. You really do. And if you take away the scriptures, if you take away prayer, if you take away God, there's not a lot there left to stand on. I'm going to share a small midrash. What's a midrash? It's a story. Imagine a world that God creates, and everyone inside this world knows that God exists 100% of the time. But his existence is undeniable. Excellent. However, in this world, God has never actually done anything. He made it, everyone knows he exists, and then he's just left it. But now you come to me and you say, Aaron, let's get together and praise the Lord. Sounds great to me, Simon. How do we do it? What do we possibly say? The way you know about God is because he does something. We couldn't say in this world that God was merciful. He hasn't shown mercy. We couldn't say he was loving because he hadn't shown love. But we do have some scriptures. God has been involved in his world. And how has he been involved? He's been involved with an ancient people. And that ancient people is Israel. And so for churches to dismiss that, you're losing something of the character of God. You're missing something. You're losing the very roots of your faith. And so one of the aims of the church's ministry among the Jewish people is to turn around and say to the church, the book that you're reading, it's a Jewish book. It comes from a Jewish world of the first century. Let's reread this story like the first century disciples of Yeshua, of Jesus. Let's hear again the words of the Master. Let's see what God has done in the past with his people and look at that as a character and reflect on that. And then that will actually give us a hope and a vision for the future.
Amen to that. Sounds good to me. And Micah, how can our viewers be praying for you and other believers and the rest of those brave and courageous women fighting for the IDF right now? Because we know there's still battalions of troops in Gaza, there's still IDF troops in Syria and also in Lebanon as well, and how we need to pray for that divine protection over your nation, your people.
Well, I would say pray for the resolve and just the strength to keep going. This is the longest war in Israel's history and the most taxing. Like you said very, very early on, PTSD is rampant among civilians and in some soldiers. Just the emotional stress of our people are still in captivity and we haven't been able to get them out. Why haven't we been able to get them out? Please help us. Why does the world hate us? This is, I would say, the resolve to just keep going.
Excellent. So Micah and Aaron, thank you so much for being my guests on the Middle East Report. You've done an amazing job. Thank you so much. We're praying for you as well. And just thank you for watching this program today. It's imperative that we pray for those brave and courageous men and women serving in the IDF today. And we thank them for defending the one and only Jewish state of Israel, but also defending the West against this evil, demonic ideology that would destroy Israel and all of us too. So thank you for watching the Middle East Report.